All right, y'all. We're
Hey,
live.
let's go, y'all. Let's go.
Welcome to Marriage Mondays with the
Mhm,
Tillmans and the
mhm.
Bullocks.
Whoop,
Whoop, whoop.
whoop. We here.
All right, y'all, what's our topic tonight?
Well, let's introduce ourselves first because not everybody knows us.
Not everybody knows. I thought everybody knew us. I mean, we are not that popular.
unless you know something I don't know.
All right. That's what I just the Tillmans and the Bullocks is not enough.
Mm-mm,
Okay.
mm-mm.
All right. So we are the Tillmans. We are your co-host and co-leaders for the
Mhm,
Living Well Marriage community.
mhm,
And then the Bullocks are co-hosts over on the East Coast from
mhm.
Florida,
Whoop, whoop.
and we've been doing marriage ministry together for a while now.
Yes.
And they used to actually be here in Phoenix, and then they left us and went to Florida. But we have stayed connected. We have continued this ministry together, and um, we do this to serve marriages in the kingdom.
That's right.
So right now we also have we are the Marriage On for Faith Christian Center, where we lead small groups for the marriage folks, or for the married folks in Faith Christian Center as well. We are looking to serve the whole marriage community for Christ. So whether it doesn't matter where you are, if you need marriage ministry resources, we're here for you.
Amen.
Amen. Great intro.
Yes, very good intro.
I feel
So
like
you
I got
know,
onions in my eye.
and I also want to, I wanted to do, an introduction because I know that not everybody knows who we are. And also tonight, we are trying to do things a little bit different. So, we usually talk about different topics that we know that couples are having challenges with or things that they're facing, based off of like the Bullocks experience with them being biblical counselors. They're on the team at their church that counsels couples and families. They have their own business, which we will let them talk about today, and where they are constantly working with couples through our marriage small groups. We know some of the things, communication, different things that couples are constantly wanting to learn and know more about. Well, we also want to make things not just always from a high level, but always making sure that you can make this practical for your relationship, right? And sometimes, everybody's just kind of living their life. And then you see something happen in the world. And I think that it stirs up a lot of questions that couples already have. And so we thought it would be good to talk about one of those things tonight. And so if anybody watching that is going to watch this now live with us, or someone who's going to watch it later, knows who Sheryl Lee Ralph is, you will know that she's this incredible actress whose, career has spanned decades. She's also a singer. I think singing is how she first started in the business, in the entertainment industry. Well, she is married, and she's been married for a long time. I don't even, I need to go back and hear how long she's been married. But recently, there was this conversation that was started because of a video of her talking about her marriage. And so tonight, we want to talk about some of what she shared in that video and have a conversation with all of you, talk about some strategies of if this is the case for you and how you address it. And so that's what tonight is all about. And I think we're going to have a really great conversation. Did any one of y'all want to say anything before I share the video?
No, let's go ahead and jump into
Yeah.
it. I'm, I'm,
Okay.
I'm, I'm ready to jump.
So okay.
Okay. All right. So you all have to let us know. Hopefully, you should hear the sound. Okay. Yeah, it's already chosen. Okay. All right. So we're gonna start from here.
He has his own life. I have my own life.
We're back.
Have my own life. He has Pennsylvania State Senator Vincent Hughes. Take a look. He has his own life. I have my own life. He has his own real career. I have my own real career. We also live in separate places. When I go to see him, love to see him. When it's time to leave, bye-bye, see you soon. New life is good.
All right. So what are y'all first responses or reactions to watching that? Besides the fact that it's very entertaining.
He just came across as one of them aunties that was just like, I'm tired of talking about this. I'm about to let you know. Don't ask me no more questions. Conversation. And she was sharp too. But I'm just saying that the tone definitely had that black auntie feel of like, don't ask me no more questions after.
I'm done talking about this.
Yeah, so to give context, her husband lives in Philadelphia, and of course she stays in the state of California.
Yeah, she's in LA.
And of course she's an actress, and I believe he's a
politician of some sort.
Yeah. And so he has his own place in Philadelphia, and she has her own place in Hollywood.
And I think they've been married, what was it, 20 years or 20 plus or something like that?
Yeah,
years or something like that?
19 years.
Yeah, okay, you're 19 years. 19, 20. I mean, so they've made it work for quite a while.
Yeah, and that makes me pose the question that, number one, and I know another entertainer or talk show host talked about it, is that it's easy for them to probably do it because the money that they bring in, you know. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of unrealistic for the rest of everybody, you know, because you think about it, you know, can I sustain paying 2 mortgages? Can I sustain, you know, the flights back and forth? You know, they're making probably, you know, I don't know what they're making. I'm not going to assume that they're, you know, well, I guess we could assume they're millionaires of just being in the business for a long time. But it was kind of difficult because listening to it, because it's just kind of their relationship should come from that point of view. But anytime somebody says what they do, especially a celebrity, other people think, well, I can do that too.
Yeah.
I think I want to do something like that. I think I want to live in my own place and you live in your own place and we be good.
I already know he wouldn't last. I wouldn't last either. I would want to live with my spouse. But I do agree. I think they can do it because they probably are worth a lot of money, hopefully. It's evidently, and they can do 2 mortgages and a flying, just like he said. And it seems like it works for them. So they got kids and all kind of stuff. So yeah. So that's my outlook. You know, su casa is your casa. Like whatever works for you and all that. But I don't think I know I couldn't do that.
I feel, well, again, all I can do is assume, and I pray that it's authentic and genuine as it's being portrayed across the video. But I feel like it just leaves the door wide open for so many other things. You know, I know we can get comfortable in that lifestyle, but I said this to my wife when we first watched it. I'm like, what if I'm, you know, got that feeling? You know what feeling I'm talking about? I got to call you up and you got to fly, you know, to a particular time and come here. I don't know. It's really hard. It seems like the door is wide open for a lot of things.
I told him last night, I said they have 2 very, very specific types of jobs, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like she's probably filming all the time in LA. He has decided to be a politician literally in Pennsylvania. You can't be like, oh, I don't want to be a politician in Pennsylvania anymore. I'm going to go be a politician in California, you know, like. So I was like, maybe they both had to like either figure out we're not going to either be together or we're going to make this work. And they made it work. So I'm like, I ain't gonna judge you, auntie. I'm like, I don't know. I'm just saying for me, I wouldn't want to do it.
Well, I'm not judging, but I'm just saying. And so it will be very difficult. Even even if I feel like one of us will have to choose one or the other. And I know that's hard for people probably to hear because we live in such a
Mhm.
culture of independence. And and for many different fields of out there. I mean, you think about when we was talking about it, we was thinking about athletes. You know,
Yeah.
athletes are pretty much gone.
Mhm. Mhm.
But uh, for
And
the
their wives usually don't travel with them, except for that one basketball player. His
yeah,
wife wouldn't travel with him.
yeah, for the majority, you don't really hear the athletes. They're having another high profile type of
Mhm.
few of them out there. But I was about to say Taylor Swift and what's the other guy from the Chiefs? I hope the Chiefs don't win. I don't. I don't want them to win. But anyway, uh, Taylor Swift and
I forgot his name.
the type,
Kelsey.
yeah,
Yeah.
Kelsey. So I'm pretty sure those two high profile people in their relationship, and they seem like they're making it work. He'll fly out, but once again, they got the money. Us all us, some of us regular people, that'd be a difficult task.
Yeah. What y'all feel, Tillmans?
So I think it can be out of necessity because if you
Mhm.
have two different careers like that and you come together
Mhm.
and you want to keep those careers, you can make it work. I think about even in the Bible where soldiers they would when they first got married that first year they were required to come home and be together,
Mhm.
but after
Mhm.
that, boom, they were off, off to war. So and many of them made that work. And I think in our society, for instance, when you in the tech world, let's say you got a job here in Phoenix and then you get laid off and then you have an offer over in California.
Mhm.
I've
Yep.
known couples where they would, they'd be separate because the guy would have to, or the woman would have to take that job in California to keep, those two incomes going because they've set their life up like that. Now we were quite intentional in setting up our early on one income household. So if we needed to move, we could go. We could get up and go. So there's trade offs though
Mhm.
when it comes to
That's right.
making that decision.
That's right.
So I think if it's out of necessity where hey we both got jobs um, and I know we're gonna get some flack from folks that are like, well, somebody needs to be dedicated to the children and don't need to be focused on two different jobs and things like that. But each household is different,
Mhm.
all the needs are different, and you have to take that into account. I mean, I think it can work, but you very much have to be, I mean, even together you have to be intentional about making this thing work.
Yeah.
So if you're going to be apart, it's going to take that much more effort for you to make sure that you have that unity.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I feel like it depends on the type of marriage relationship that you want to have.
Mhm.
Um, I think the thing that stood out to me the most about what she said was not even the fact that they lived in two different households. It's when she said, "I have my own life, he has his own life."
Mm,
Mm.
That's what stood out in my mind. Is like that to me is the thing I would have the biggest issue with because I do think that people, like all of us, we are in traditional is not the word, but maybe more conventional. Maybe that's not the word either. But we live, live and work in ways where we can be in the same household. But there is tons of couples
Yeah.
that don't have that luxury, right? So if you're in the military, your spouse can literally be gone for a whole year or 2 years at a time.
Yeah.
Um, and you won't get to be with them during that time. Or, if your spouse has even if you live in the same household, but maybe your spouse has like some type of health issues which prevents you guys from coming together regularly or even being in the same room together. So I think there's a lot of different reasons why couples may not be in the same household or be in the same bedroom all the time and all that stuff. But when I hear someone say, "I have my own life and he has his own life," then what I always wonder is what is your definition of marriage? You know, and and because I'm answering this not for her or with any judgment for him or her, but I know for me, I want us to be one. Like I want us to have the kind of marriage where our lives are connected to each other. Um, and so I know one of the things around this that I wanted us to talk about, the four of us, and hopefully the people that are watching, you know, we would love to hear your thoughts and your comments. You can drop them right there in the comment box, and we would love to discuss anything or answer any questions.
Yeah, let
But
us know if you
yeah,
if you live apart.
yeah,
You know, like Kendra said, military, long haul truck drivers.
yeah. We learned about that, long
Yes,
haul truck drivers.
and I know we have some truck drivers in our community. A few that I've talked to, they're short haul, so they don't live apart right now. But some of them have done some of the long haul stuff, and it wasn't easy.
Yeah,
right. It was a challenge. So, but continue.
yeah. So what I would love to hear about is like your thoughts around independence and interdependence in marriage, right? Because I do think there is a degree of independence that you hold on to even once you're married, because you are still an individual, right? So you're still an individual, but now you have joined with this other person and you still need your own identity.
Yep.
Right. So how do you navigate being independent from your spouse, but also still being interdependent on each other? I would just like to hear any thoughts y'all have about that.
Well, the one thing that I did not get out from the video, and I love your thoughts that you posed about how this is I live a life and he lives a life, but the other aspect of that, now that you're talking, we don't know how long they've been doing this. We really don't. So they could have spent 19 out that 19 years that they've been married, probably 15 years growing, developing, you know, with probably one person doing the acting, because I know she's been doing being an actress for a long time. Maybe he stepped into that role. You know, I don't know if he's been a politician for 19 years, but
right. That's a good point.
And yeah, to develop to the point where they're saying, "Hey, you're still going to be an actress. You're still out there. You're popular. You're still doing your thing, and this is something that I've stepped into that I would like to explore, and I would like to actually do." And so they made that agreement, made that commitment that this is going to probably be how it is for a particular season of time. And that was probably the discussion. You live your life over here in the politician world, and then I'm going to live my life because, you know, I've been doing this for so long, and I'm going to continue on growing and developing in this arena. So that's another thing that I didn't think about, because that might be a possibility where they would strengthen some stuff in order to do it. Now, if you're just starting out, I think that's a little tough. That's a little tough because, you know, I know back when we first got married 5 years, I could not be apart from my wife. And I think it was just dealing with some other insecurities that I had and everything like that. But I honestly, I wanted to know my wife. I wanted to be around her. I wanted to grow. And so it would have been difficult for me to do that. But now we're at a particular time in her age. She can go away for a few hours, and I'm fine with it. You know, I'm not
a few hours. Not a whole day, just a few hours.
Just a few hours.
But that's how it was when we first got married. Like, I went away for a few hours, and he like, "Where you at when you coming home?" All sorts of stuff. Now I can go away for like a week or so. But yeah, he likes me around. Yes.
So I guess really talk about independence. I think they can coexist as long as there's agreement. Okay. And then once you have agreement, she has to be individually her, and I have to be individually me.
Yeah.
Because that's who God created us to be. But he also draw us together to be one.
Yeah.
And so we need each other from a standpoint of, I mean, to move forward in what we believe that God has for us, and to move forward for the kids' sake.
I think it's very similar, just like marriage is supposed to be an example of the Holy Trinity. I think it's very similar to that. Like, for example, like, I'm my own unique person, and God created me to be unique. Like, I always trip out on, like, I got my own fingerprints, my voice box. I could have a twin, but my voice box is me, right?
Mhm.
But God still wants me to be dependent on him versus being independent of him. Like, I don't need him. I'm doing my own thing. He still wants to partner with me. He still wants to do life with me. And he's God. So to me, that's an example of how marriage is. Like, yeah, I'm definitely my own person. But at the same time, there's a dependency and a oneness and a unity that I know he desires, but I desire too. And so I think it's finding out, I think what you said earlier, like, what kind of marriage do they want? And what kind of, because I know for me, I wanted a true partnership. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
I want to be like, okay, well, I'm gonna be over here and you do this, and then we come together. I didn't want a roommate experience, because that's the way I looked at it. I wanted a real, like, we are doing life together. And I think you have to figure out, what kind of marriage do you want? And then you have to be intentional about it. I'm sure whatever they do, they have to be intentional about whatever they have agreed to do. And I think in marriage, marriage requires that. But it's the same with your walk with God. You have to be intentional. You have to spend time with God. You got to spend time in your word. Same with your spouse. You need to be intentional. It's a relationship. And if I take a long time and I never talk to somebody, you're going to kind of just naturally kind of grow apart. You know, so to me, it's about being intentional and knowing what you want.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. You have to be very intentional about your situation, and it changes from the depending on what stage of marriage you are in. So when you first get married, I think it's very important for you to be close and for you to be intimate, in close proximity with each other, because there's a whole lot of challenges that come with not being in proximity with each other. And I think that's why, like, when you're in the military and you have to be apart, all of a sudden in the beginning, a lot of those marriages are challenged, and some of them break through and overcome, but some of them have lifelong issues that they are not able to overcome. So I think with like Sheryl Lee Ralph, they are very mature in their marriage now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you can make very different decisions in terms of how close in proximity you want to be or need to be, depending on what you're trying to do in life. So they're making agreements with each other about, hey, I'm going to be over here, you're going to be over there. And I'm sure they have to stay connected in some way, because being one doesn't necessarily mean that you're in the same space all the time.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. You can be one and be apart for months at a time. Right. If you have established that oneness ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
I think you probably have had to work on that and get to that point. Just like we talk about all the time, you're not going to stay together just because you want to. You have to intentionally push yourselves together to become one. Otherwise, the natural state is to drift apart, even if you're in the same house.
Yeah. We chime into Vern and Shanika, and so I would love for Vern to bring some commentary to his 6 months of marriage. So he says, we were in different countries in the first 6 months of our marriage. And so, Vern, can you chime in at some time and kind of let us know?
Or Shanika.
Or Shanika, how was that experience? What are some of the things that you guys had to do intentionally? And what are some of the challenges that you experienced being in two different countries for 6 months? I had a question for you guys as we're talking about this independence and interdependence, or being connected. Now we're in a technology-driven type of society, and knowing that, do you think technology could be a good substitute when we are apart like this? When we made an agreement, I live on two different types of coasts, that could be sufficient? What's your opinion about that?
So I don't know if I would use the word sufficient,
Mm-hmm.
but I would. It definitely. I think technology is a tool, and it's neutral, and it can be used for good, and it can be used for bad.
Mm-hmm.
Even in relationships, right? It can be used to connect. Like, so if you're physically apart now, you can check in every night. You can text each other emojis, and
Yeah. You can
so
actually see each other, which you couldn't before.
yeah.
Yeah.
And every single time you do that, it's a act of turning toward your spouse, right? Even though you're not in the same place or in the same space. So I think technology is great in that way if you use it in that way.
I think that a big part of all of this is you have to be honest with yourself. You know, sometimes we don't lie to other people, but we lie to ourselves, right? And we lie to
I got a
our
whole series on that.
we lie to ourselves about what's really happening, and we can come up with a lot of reasons, we can come up with a lot of excuses, and we can tell ourselves a lot of things. We can justify, you can find a way to justify just about anything, right? And if you but you have to be honest with yourself. How are you using technology? To your question, Dennis, like, how are you using this to actually bring you closer together with your spouse? Are you really using it? Because I think I'm gonna be completely transparent. Like, I know that when Daniel and I are in the car now and I'm in the passenger seat, I'm on my phone way, way more than I ever used to be. And there's times when I will catch myself, like, we're driving down the road and I'm on my phone, like I'm watching a video or whatever, and I'm like, he's sitting right next to me,
Mhm.
right? And that's an opportunity for connection where but I'm so in my phone that I'm not picking it up, the connection. Usually, like, if he breaks the silence and he says something, then I'll stop what I'm doing on my phone. But I have noticed that over the years, I have been on my phone more when we're in the car together. And so to me, like, that's one of those, that's technology. That's me using technology, but it's not being used to bring us closer together. It's being used to, for me to be into a whole nother world. And so that's why it's like, when I think that when you are thinking about your marriage, you're watching this right now and you're thinking about your marriage, are you being honest with yourself about the connection that you and your spouse have? And I think that you can always make a decision to, if you feel disconnected, if either one of you feels disconnected, you can make a decision to connect, figure out a way. So if you do live in separate homes for whatever reason, job reasons, your careers or whatever, your health, maybe one spouse is in the hospital, the other one is at home, whatever it looks like, how can you not allow that to drive you apart, and how can you use it to bring you together?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, that's good.
That's very good. I often it also brings into how do you guys feel if let's use the tech example that Daniel talked about. If I have to, we're living in Arizona. They're making some layoffs, and they said you got to move back up to San Francisco, and you got to make it happen. We need to have you here soon. Is there a time where you saying that, my family is down here, got young kids, and again, I guess it goes back to what we decide on what we're going to do to make work. Because I feel like, again, it's coming from my own personality, my preference. I would rather just be around my family, and I would rather try to figure out what we have to do as far as finding another job instead of leaving my family kind of, by themselves. I know I could probably fly back on the weekends. I've heard stuff like that. But it just seemed like just the day-to-day action, you start to lose a little piece of the relationship, just by that distance.
There's definitely going to be some pros and cons. There's going to be some gives in that situation, but it just depends on what do we need to do, what is required of me as a husband right now, in terms of providing for my family and being there for them at the same time. I think I've read some nonfiction books where back in, when Jim Crow era or the migration, I think it was that book,
Oh yeah,
Warmer Sons.
yeah, the warmth of other
Warmth
suns.
of Other Suns, where
Mhm.
the men had, at least in the Black community, men had to make certain decisions to even stay alive. And so they might need to leave the family for a little bit, in order to provide for their family and to be around later on. So that meant they were going to miss out on some of the kids' life. They were going to miss out on some of that, bonding time that they would have gotten during that time with their wife. But that was a life or death situation for them. Or it was a situation where maybe he couldn't get a job in the area that he was in, so he had to leave in order to provide for the family. Those type of situations come up even today, right? You're not necessarily in a life or death situation today, but maybe you just can't find work where you are, and men that don't work don't eat.
Right.
Right. So he's got to go find work so that the family can be provided for. So no judgment in that area from me. If you're trying to provide for your family, and but you're having to make the choice of being in proximity or going to find work to provide for the family.
So what would you guys say to that? Like, so, because yeah, I think that's such a good point, because it even made me think about immigrant families, because that's how they operate a lot of times, like where one person leaves whatever the country is and they move to the other country, and they go and they get work and they establish some living, and then they bring the family over, and that could take years for that to happen, right? And they somehow still manage to stay married to each other, to stay faithful to each other.
Sometimes.
Yeah, not, I mean, of course, yeah. Sometimes.
There's definitely those scenarios where it doesn't work. But but what do you do? Like if you're in a desperate situation where we don't have the basic needs, and here's a scenario that we can come up with to make that happen.
Yeah, I think. Well, how do you feel about it? I mean, I do agree with you. Do what you got to do to take care of your family, but I guess when we talk about the balance of that, there's a part of, if I do go away, my family's left wide open. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
My wife is left wide open. My kids are left wide open for maybe protection purposes, just being in the proximity. I can get to them a little more quicker. I can be a little more observant of what's going on. But I understand. I totally agree with you when you talk about, if you got to do what you got to do, take care of your family, then you got to make decisions on that. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. And so that's one thing I would never ever try to tell people, like, don't do something like that. I think it and that starts to move beyond preferences too.
I think that all goes back to priorities. We can't make it. We struggling. All right, we need to send one person to another country to take care of us because we're struggling. And if you don't have food and a safe place and all that, that's probably going to take priority. But, just like I looked up while we were talking, her husband's been in government or whatever, politics, since like 1994, 1996. So maybe she met him and he was already a politician. And they were like, I just love you so much. This is what we're going to do because I'm already in my career. So who knows? I think it honestly comes down to priority. And then once you figure out, like, this is the kind of marriage we want, I think it's figuring out how we're going to make this work and how we going to work. Where we had a counseling training this weekend and they were talking about basically, what was the title of it? In regards to parenting and connecting attachment theories and different things.
Yeah.
And they were talking about, like, it's got to be a win-win for everybody. And in marriage, when we're seeing that it's not working, then it has to be like, we need to pause and how do we make this work for everybody? And they were talking about how that works with attachment, right? So to me, I think that's just having that conversation. How does it work for us as well? And then I like what Rhonda said as well,
So let's read a couple of these. So Vernon said that, so basically for those it may be that are just joining us right now, initially Vernon has shared that their first 6 months of marriage, they were in the military, so they were apart, or he was in the military, so they were apart, him and Shanika. And he said this was before Zoom, FaceTime, etc. So for us, we had expensive phone bills. Amen. And it was very challenging not being able to be around each other. And our marriage was in jeopardy during that time. And so I wanted to say, my mother served in Desert Storm back in 1994, 1989 in 1989, 1990. So I was in high school when my mom left for 9 months to serve in Desert Storm. So for 9 months, my mom was in a war zone. And so her and my dad were not together, right? They're in living in two different places because she was in the military. And so they, thank God, they figured it out how to make it still work, with that distance apart. And so it is possible for couples to figure out how to make it work. But I do think it probably takes a lot of communication, a lot of sharing your expectations and being open and honest with each other. And then Rhonda was sharing that communication is key with the spouses for any scenario. My dad had to leave us for a year for work because there were no jobs in my small town, and he had to do it again when he came home on the weekend. So yeah, it was better for him to have a job than to sit at home. And they've been married for 52 years.
Yeah.
So it's possible.
Yeah, it's definitely possible, and I think it takes a level of maturity, and
Yes.
it takes a level also of, the interesting thing about this, I think, for people who do go through this, it takes a level of it's a strength to separate and keep the marriage together. You got to work hard. You got to really work hard at keeping those things together. Yeah. Whereas people who are next to each other all the time, they have the comforts, they have the conveniences, they have the control of certain things, and they dip. It's like, it's not working. We can't communicate, and it's like we're right here. Mm-hmm. Whereas people who got this distance, they make it work, and they put the intentionality into it, and they may have some of the same problems, but they make it work. So I think it's predicated off the personalities, the people who do it. And
it's like my dad used to say, how bad is your want to? I think whether we live in the same house or we in different states, it's how bad do I want this to work on both sides, and what am I willing to do to make it work? And that's love. Love is not always fun. So it's like,
amen, sister. Amen.
So I'd like to hear from Rhonda, if you are still there and want to, if you can share, like how did that, I guess, time in your parents' life affect you? Mm-hmm. Like, dad having to leave, or in retrospect, because you probably at the time as a kid weren't really thinking about it so much, but now looking back, how do you think it impacted you?
And while she's chiming in, I too, I remember, this was very early in my growing up. My mother, she was in the military, and she left Detroit to go to the military in Colorado, and I had to live with my grandmother. And how it affected me is when my mom came back into town, and it was for I think it was for about two and a half years before she came back and was able to send for me to come to live in Colorado. And when she came back, it was almost like, who are you? Because I had the upbringing of my grandmother. So when she spoke, of course I was younger. When she spoke, it was law. Mm-hmm. It felt like my mother was this other person coming in, and I had to make the adjustment because grandma was the disciplinary. She was the one who was raising me. She was the one who was feeding me and all that other type of stuff. And then when my mom came back into my life, it was kind of like, and I had to make that adjustment, Yeah. And she's trying to say, well, mom's here, but I got grandma, I'm attached to grandma. She was the one who was, wiping my tears. She was the one who was feeding me. And so that felt very different for me. So I kind of understand it affected me a little bit. And then my mom was going to now move me away from the person that was raising me for that time and move me to another state.
Mhm.
That happened a lot in our community back then.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? Because it was out of necessity. A lot of times, in order to get a job or in order to provide for your family, you had to move away. Or, hey, grandma, can you take this one? Because our grandparents had a lot of kids. My grandmother had 15, right? So, so if you are, got a lot of kids and you're a single parent, or maybe you weren't married back then, or even if you were, like, again, the husband might have had to go somewhere. And so mom couldn't take care of everybody by herself. So she had aunties. I give you to go live with your Aunt Clara. You gonna go live with grandma. You gonna go live with Uncle Arthur. So all of this kind of stuff was going on back then. And hey, they had to do what they had to do in order for our nuclear family to survive, and in order for the extended family, or the extended family would just step in and make sure that everybody was, cared for.
I'm so glad we are talking about this, because as I'm sitting here listening to y'all and I'm reading the comments that's being shared, I don't feel like I think we always talk about marriage from the standpoint of um, everything is perfectly laid out, right? So you got two people in the house, they love each other, they like each other, they're partners in everything, they're working through all of their issues together, and it's to me, it's real life that people's lives are not like these neat little boxes. And people are dealing with different issues and challenges that they're facing. And so I'm hoping, as you are watching this, the people that are watching this, that, especially if this is your situation, like where you and your spouse don't live in the same household for whatever reason, right? That you will understand that there is still hope, that things can be good. Like, it doesn't have to be a death sentence for your marriage just because it may not fit into like this neat little box.
Yeah.
Now, there are going to be, sorry to cut you off, Dennis.
You go.
There are going to be challenges to that scenario.
Absolutely.
That you should be intentional about.
Yes.
Right. Communication, obviously intimacy, being able to serve one another in the same house. All of that is going to be a total challenge. But we are, as humans, we're adaptable. Right? God made us very resilient, and we can be resilient in our relationships.
That's right.
Like Dennis said, and Angie said this, be very intentional when you're in that situation. Like Rhonda's parents' situation, when you had to go, they worked it out, figured it out, and they're hanging in there 52 years later. And I'm sure it's because they were intentional. And sometimes if you're not intentional and you run into some bumps, you grow up real quick and you get intentional.
Amen.
Because you don't want to separate.
That's it. That's it. What you said. I think this is a very grown up adulting type of situation where, going back to what you said earlier, Daniel, I got to do what I got to do. And if it's not working here, what is open to me for other possibilities, and what I might have to do that might, that's going to be, might be a strain, but this is what we do as adults. Sometimes we have to make hard, sacrificing, surrendering, submission type of decisions in order to make this thing work, make this family work, and we know there's a lot of other pieces that go into that to make those things work. Finances is a big thing. And so I agree wholeheartedly that it's very maturing. And I do want to say this. I hope anybody's listening to this that you don't get thinking that, especially for me, being very judgy or anything like that. I thought it was a very interesting discussion to talk about, because we always, just like Kendra said, we always got this, we're together, you know, and there's a few percentage of people who are still together, but they're still got different types of lives and everything like that. But in real actuality, man, this is how things are cut. And you know, a lot of times it's not the same way that everybody's together and we get to raise our family together. In some situations, this is what it looks like, and they're making it work.
Yeah.
Amen. Angie, I thought you was about to say something.
I was, and I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay. Well, then just let us know if it comes back to you. So good. Okay, good.
All I was going to say, to me, I feel like in marriage, that is a big part of it. Just like we just said, this is real life adulting here type of thing. But to me, in marriage, you're going to have adjusting. You're going to have different seasons. You're going to have, you know, Perry come to and say, hey, I'm here, right?
Perry
menopause, just so y'all know. That's what she's talking about.
About you talking about another guy, you know what I'm saying? Perry. I'm sorry. That was immature.
But you know what I'm saying? There's going to be different things that happen. Like to me, there was a season where I went through a really big situation, and my heart was really hurt, and I could tell. I could look at him, and he would look at me like, "Is she coming back?" Because I changed for a season while I was processing. You could be dealing with health situations. You could be dealing with my marriage is just really not working. Or like you said, Kendra, our joke, when we hit 22, we were like, it's 22 years and we still like each other. That was the thing we said all last year. Like, we still like each other. Like, let's give each other some dap.
Amen.
That is a high possibility that, you know, you can be with somebody for a very, very long time and be like, you know what? I don't like you. You know what I'm saying? But I'm going to stay around because finances, or I'm going to stay around because of kids, or I'm going to stay around for whatever reason. So I think it's just a real life situation in marriage is the adjusting. How are we going to make this work?
That's
you know,
right.
we could be in a bad place, but how can we make this work? And caring enough about each other to make those choices. And I know I say it a lot, but to me, a lot of it is just choosing your spouse again, over and over again. It may even be, I need to choose my spouse over my self-protection, or I need to choose my spouse over my trauma, or I need to choose my spouse over just, this is what I want, right? Because we're a team. So how do we make this work? So I feel like even though we're talking about, you know, the adulting part of it, I'm like, that's marriage. It is the adjustments. How do we adjust in this? Or if you have a parent that move in with you, that's an adjustment. Like,
yes.
Like, how do we have like somebody move in? Or like you said, I mean, there's sometimes where I've talked to people and they've had to take in nieces and nephews. I have somebody at my job, her sister got on drugs and became homeless. She took in 3 of her nieces and nephews, and she's young. That's just, and she has a serious relationship going on at the same time. That's an adjustment. So this is, how important are you to me? How important is our relationship to me? And how much am I willing to adjust to make this work? And it's doable. And I think it's whether you're in the same state, same house, or in different states, different countries. How much I want to adjust to make this work for you and me.
Like you said, your daddy said, how bad as you want to.
Yeah.
Even if you are in the same house, I think about shift workers, where somebody's working day shift, somebody's working night shift, and you can become ships passing each other, you know, and not ever really connecting, even though you are in the exact same house. You are worlds apart, because usually if you work the same shifts, you know, you go to work and you come home, you're in each other's space, you can debrief with each other and all that. But if you're one's working night shift, one's working day shift, you ain't got no time to debrief or any of that. The one working the night shift has to be sleep during the day, and then then vice versa. So that is also something where you have, every situation takes intention.
Yeah.
How, you know, plan it out. How are we going to do this? How are we going to make this work?
Yeah.
And what are the things that's hindering us from working? And instead of us looking at each other like, I can't stand you, or you get on my nerves, or you're part of the reason It's like, how do we get on the same page to make this work?
Yeah, and it might be for a season. This might not be for the next 5 years. This might not be for 19 years. It might be just for a year until we figure it out, until we get adjusted. Or it might be for 2 years, but during those 2 years, what are you doing intentionally to make sure that we are connected? Especially when we talk about bringing kids, where we have kids in the picture in the family. And I think sometimes that's what we think about a lot of times, is I'm thinking about the kids. And it deals with some of my own traumas because I didn't have my family together. And so when that didn't happen, I kind of grew up knowing that when I get married, we're going to be together. We're going to be in the same house. All my kids are going to be in the same house. And so that was kind of my mindset, because I saw us always scattered. We wasn't together. Yeah. And then when we were together in the same house, a lot of us didn't want to talk to each other. So
I wanted to bring up Rhonda's point here. She said before we got married, we spent time talking about how to make a marriage work, given the distance, and how we will make our marriage work. First 5 months, we were long distance. So we created a plan. So that's exactly what I was saying. And I didn't even see her comment. It's like every situation requires some sort of plan that, you don't have to have some long written out plan, but have something in mind and discuss it, right? Throw the ideas back and forth with each other before you enter into the marriage, or before you enter into a particular season, whether it's night shift, day shift work. That's Rhonda, looks like Rhonda's, that's their situation.
Yeah.
LeVar works the night shift, or it's, like what Vern was talking about, we were in totally different countries, right? So yeah,
and that's an excellent point when you said that about the night shift versus day shift, and then Rhonda highlighting that, because that is, to me, that is way more common, probably. Like, I would be curious to even see some statistics on that, how many couples work that way, because my parents did. I'm the oldest of 5. And when we were coming up, my parents always worked opposite shifts so that we could be at home. Like, we wouldn't get shuffled around to different people, because there's 5 of us, right? Until I was at the age where I could, babysit everybody. But so my parents always worked those opposing shifts. And so that requires a lot of work to figure out how we gonna make this work. Like, I'm going to bed when you getting up, So that's a whole nother conversation. So, this applies if you're watching and you've been listening and you're like, yeah, this applies to us, because we're on 2 different shifts and we're still trying to figure out how to make this work. So hopefully some of what we've shared tonight has helped you think about how can you make it work. And like, I really like the questions that you were having them answer, Angie. And then it's like, what are the things hindering us from making it work? How do we get on the same page so we can make this work? Like, I can tell you, the word that I learned from watching my parents, how they made it through when they both were working these opposing shifts. And the one word I would use to describe marriage is teamwork. Like, I always saw my parents, I felt like they worked as a team to keep us safe, to make sure that we had what we needed. And so them working those opposing night shifts was just another form of teamwork, of like, okay, here's how we gonna make this work. We got all these kids we gotta feed. So how do we make sure that they're also safe and cared for and they have what they need, and so that's what they did. They worked opposing shifts. So I'm glad that you brought that.
One thing too, or 2 things, and this could even be with a newborn baby. Like, I feel like we on different shifts because we have a newborn in the house.
Yep, Angie, that's right.
Out again, but what I want to say, what Kendra said a while ago, is being truthful to yourself. Because I think what you can see is that sometimes in marriages, relationships, people will say, yeah, I'm cool with that, but internally they kind of are questioning it, but they're like, I'll go with it, and they don't really speak up, and then they start doing it, and now resentment builds up, or I feel some kind of way, or you're kind of taking advantage of the situation or whatever. And I think what you said earlier, you have to be really honest with yourself. I think sometimes when we want something to work, we can not be honest with ourselves, but also not really be honest with the person we're married to, because we're like, I really want this to work, but I don't necessarily agree with the plan.
Yeah, I think that I think about when you think about celebrities, and they do have these high profile jobs that's going to take them away from, you know,
Their
from their families for months and everything. The husband saying, "Yeah, I love you. I can work this out. We'll work this out." And then eventually you see them get divorced, maybe after 5-10 years or something like that, and they're claiming irreconcilable differences, whatever. But sometimes I believe that you really wasn't honest with yourself at the beginning. You just kind of forced it because you wanted to work. But if you would have been honest and like said, you know what, I love you and I want this relationship to work, but I don't like the long distance. At some point, can we at least set a plan to where we can live in the same place, or or it's going to be hard. And I think sometimes people don't look forward to making those plans. I think they just kind of just like live life, and then they just gradually start growing further and further apart.
Because honesty takes bravery, in my opinion. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes to be honest, it takes bravery to say really how you feel and what you want, what you don't like. But it's better than sometimes in counseling, I guess is the best way to say what I'm trying to say. A lot of times in counseling, we have people say to us, but I just want peace. And our answer is, but it's true, authentic peace. And usually it's not. So it's kind of like, well, if there's
Angie, how do they know if the peace is real or if it's just them avoiding the issues?
Well, that depends on self-awareness. I think that's tough because sometimes people get married young and they don't know that type of stuff. This is a time where you have to really examine your heart and know, because there's always, I believe, there's red flags.
That's what that was gonna be my answer.
Made me lose my chain of thought, but okay.
You said there's always going to be red flags.
There's going to be red flags. There's times where we feel when somebody says something, and I'm gonna get spiritual with you for a few minutes. The Holy Spirit is saying, but we override it and we say,
"That's right."
And I use this for example. You're so beautiful that I want to be with you, and I don't want nobody else to have you. But you're being dishonest with yourself, because the red flag is, yeah, she's beautiful, but she's in debt, or
she's mean and controlling or something, or she's degrading or something. I don't know.
I can't think of anything. We're just throwing stuff out there. But you start to override those red flags, and then you keep on overriding. And then when you come to a self-awareness, you come to yourself. You're like, what have I done?
Right.
Like, you're beautiful, but I don't like you.
Right.
Yes.
You get tired. You know how people say you just got to get tired of being sick and tired.
Yep.
In marriage, that's what happens, is that some people, they override, they ignore the red flags. They're not really honest with themselves because they want the marriage to work so badly. But I think we're trying to say from the counseling point of view, we want your marriage to work in an honest, truthful, authentic way, versus you got to kind of hide stuff or keep stuff, push down stuff in your heart because of certain things. And
it's very healthy to address it at the very beginning. At least that's what you should be doing at the very beginning, and having those honest, healthy talks about certain things.
I would say, like, our marriage didn't change until I just got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I had a moment where I was like, I'm afraid to have this conversation with him. I don't know how he's going to react, but he hates when I say this. But this is what I said to myself on the inside. I said, Angela, pull up your big girl panties and go to that room. But that's literally what I said to myself. Like, you can do this. You're going to have a brave moment and go in there and tell him how you feel. And it changed our marriage big time, because it started this honest conversation of years and years of us just trying to push stuff down and ignore the big old elephant in the room. And sometimes in moments like what we're talking about, whether you're living separate, you are night shift, day shift, there are going to be moments where you're not going to always agree with what's going on, but those conversations help you to be on a team. They help you to build trust. They help you to build vulnerability. Is just being two willing partners who are willing to listen to each other.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. Because if you have a partner who you're being vulnerable with and they push you down or shut you up every time, you're not going to want to be honest. But then it's honestly having a conversation with them like, well, babe, every time I try to talk to you, I feel like you shut me down. Can you give me a minute? Let me really express myself. But it's those honest conversations and relationships that really do build. Just like Simbas. What's the people who made Simbas?
Dr. Les and
yes,
Leslie.
Les and Leslie. They always say like conflict is the price that you pay for intimacy. And as we say,
all right, say that again, Angie.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite quotes from Les and Leslie. They say that conflict is the price that you pay for intimacy. And we always like to say conflict is not a bad thing if it's done in a healthy manner. It's just learning the tools, conflict management, communication, hard conversations, brave conversations, is just knowing how to do it and being two willing people to work it out, because marriage is work, but it's very valuable work because God wants to love on you and grow you up through your partnership with each other.
Yeah. And I think like when Rhonda and the Daniels talked about their distance, I like how Rhonda said we had to be very intentional and plan how we had our discussions, because typically a lot of people are just going with the flow. I mean, when we started dating, it took me a while to come to myself and be like, man, I'm spending too much money.
Because he was taking me to Benihana's, y'all,
and
like
we
every
need to have
week.
some real discussions. We're not having no real discussions. I was like, I know her, but I don't know her, and so I need to start asking her some questions like, do you have any debt? Do you, start asking some real questions besides just trying to wine and dine. Now it's getting serious. And so I love the whole point of sometimes you got to literally address the issue. You got to tackle it head on and
I'm not
be honest.
And I'm not going to say this just because we're counselors, but it's like, we know some people, they have accountability couples, people who are in their lives who help them, people who they go on date nights with. But if you have a hard time with these kind of things, ask somebody for help, because this is skills. It's just skills in marriage. So it's like counselors, coaches, accountability partner, friends. Ask people for help. Or how do you have these hard conversations? Plus, there's books, there's podcasts, there's tools out there to help you guys with these kind of conversations.
And you guys provide tools. So tell them about the tools that the two of you provide.
I'm like, go ahead, husband.
I don't know why they keep on going away from us, but come on back. But some of the things that we provide in our business is Higher Clarity. We really minister to couples as of right now. And one of the areas that we notice that a lot of couples deal with is communication. And what we want to do is kind of up the ante in the skills of communication. Sometimes it's just, unless you take some time you can be a good communicator and you're able to communicate your thoughts well to people. But then when you're in your marriage, it's really difficult because either somebody's pissed you off, they said something, or triggered you. And when you get triggered, sometimes it's really hard for you to process, especially with the thoughts that are coming in your head. You get a whole bunch of thoughts. And so one of the things that we like to do with couples, it provides some clarity, and then letting them know that you have to make the adjustment. You got to make some changes in order for this to work. Or if you're going to not make the changes, you're going to find yourself continue on drifting and disconnecting from this relationship. And eventually you wind up frustrated. And some people wind up so frustrated that they say, I don't want to deal with that. And so what we do with Higher Clarity is that we offer not only counseling, but then we also offer coaching. We go back. That's what counseling is. We go back and we run it deep, but then what you want to do is move you forward and reach higher in your marriage relationship. And so that's what we do as of right now in Higher Clarity with marriage couples. And so we'll either just listen to you for 1 or 2 sessions, or you can take an assessment and we'll be with you for a little
And
while.
I will say this too. We do singles, meaning like maybe you don't want to come in with your husband yet or whatever, or maybe you're just a single woman, you want to work on some other things. But I will also say this. A lot of times the issues that we have in communication and in our relationships are things from our past, whether how we look at things, what triggers us, what makes a safe space. So we have different assessments that we do, different assessments in regards to your communication, conflict. What's your communication style? How do you communicate? And then once we can figure out those things and figure out what are the issues or the barriers, and we can work on healing in those areas, and then we can start working on the coaching area. So we have different things that we do for communication.
Yeah, we're working with a couple in Oklahoma, and we just sent out their communication quiz that they have to turn back into us. But it's a great way to kind of really assess how they talk to each other
and why.
Yeah, and why. And so we love doing it, and so get the higher clarity that they need in their relationship. So yes, thank you, Kendra.
Thank you, Kendra.
Thank you, Daniel.
Awesome. So if you need coaching, counseling, reach out to Bullocks through Higher Clarity. The website is in the comments. And if you're watching this on replay, type in replay to let us know. And this has been a great conversation tonight.
Yes.
That's why we have this community, because we know that there are topics and things that we may not have experienced in our own lives, but there are plenty of us in the community that have had to go through long distance relationships or night shift, day shift. All right. And those dynamics are much different, and they require intentionality. They require tools, communication tools, just understanding each other and making plans. So there are people in our community that have gone through it, been there, done that. There's nothing new under the sun. Somebody has gone through it and survived it, or made it through, and they're willing to share with you. So whether you are mature in it or you're just starting to hit it, that's what our community is all about. All right.
Yes.
All right. And if there's any topics that, as you are, when you're watching this, if there's any topic that maybe you even see on social media, like a video that you see that you would love to honestly just have a real conversation around it, have perspective that's not just from a perspective of, okay, this is what the world has to say, but what does God have to say about it, or what does the scriptures have to say? Because we are not God, but what do the scriptures have to say about it? Share those with us. Message us on either Instagram, Facebook. You can send us a message, a private message, and let us know, hey, would you guys talk about this on one of your Marriage Mondays? And we would love to do that, and we plan to do more of that going forward. So
yeah, you can email us as well.
Yep.
All right. And if you're not subscribed and you're watching this, it's a sign from the Lord. You need to go ahead and subscribe, because it's come up on your page. I was going to say For You page, but that's TikTok. So it's come up in your feed, your Instagram feed or your Facebook feed, or you found us on YouTube. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything that we discuss.
All right. Bullocks, any final thoughts or words before we wrap up for tonight?
No, I think it was a great discussion, and I look forward to the next one.
All right, y'all. Y'all have a great night, and we'll see y'all next Monday, same time, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Peace.